So I really love the Chrome Dev Tools. I'm sure everyone here uses them or have used them at some point. So if you are an expert and in them, please continue to spread the gospel. You don't have to listen to my presentation, but continue to tell people to use them because I think they're absolutely awesome. And I use them for pretty much everything. This is going to focus primarily on the browser, not on the Node.js Dev Tools, which is kind of sort of the same thing with a few different features. But I wanted to go over using them in Chrome Canary, which has the most recent build of these. So you get the best features that are coming out. So where I wanted to start, the first thing is one of the features they have is asynchronous call tracing. Common use case you have is you send out an AJAX request, you set a timer, there's web workers, and usually the stack trace starts where the XHR request comes back. So you can't see before that stack trace the actual method that invoked that. So one of the things that you want to do sometimes is you want to see the state of the function that called that AJAX request when it called it. So right here, I have a get.json. And by the way, this is all in CoffeeScript. Sorry for those JavaScript purists out there, but I also want to demonstrate source mapping. So this whole presentation pretty much demonstrates source mapping. So we stop on a debugger statement. And if you look at the stack trace on the right, you see in the middle there where my mouse is, it says XML HTTP request async. So what I can do is usually that's where this stack trace would start in the, previously. But what I can do is I can actually go back to where the function that sent the the request, the do AJAX request, and I can see the parameters that I sent with the request. So for example, I sent those params .search to this particular AJAX request. So it's a little bit like going back in time. You can do this with timers. That's another type of asynchronous operation. So here I set a timeout for 10 milliseconds. Then we have that. I'm going to actually pull up the debugger so you can see what's popping in there, or the console. Another thing you can do this with is workers. I don't know how many people have worked with web workers, but they're essentially multi-threading in JavaScript, as multi-threaded as you can get. Not supported in a huge amount of browsers, but I'm hoping one day this will be the future of multi-threading. So when you do this, I have a worker that's going in the background that does a fairly heavy task. And what it does is it posts a message back to the main thread with some kind of event data of whatever it computed, whatever it did. So here, what it actually does over here on the right-hand side, you have, it shows the two threads you have going. So I have my edit distance, which is the name of the algorithm, and then I also have my main thread here. So it's a really nice way. If that's something you have in your application, then that's awesome that you get to use that in production code. I wish I could, but that's something you can do here. All right. Another, I was mentioning how it's kind of like going back in time. So we're going to go back in time real quick. So you have any function you go through, and you start to change variables, you change global state, you do a whole bunch of different things. Well, sometimes when you're pressing through the debugger, you skip through and you're like, oh crap, I meant to do this, I meant to do that, and I skipped over a statement I accidentally wanted to. Well, there's actually a way to go back in time. So what you can do is in the call stack over here, I'm currently in an anonymous function. That's really hard to say. In an anonymous function. And what I'm going to do real quick is I have two variables here. I have the top repo variable, and I'm sorry if that's a little hard to see. And then I also, so that's locally scoped to this closure. And then I have another variable, best repo, which is attached to the window. So that's like a global object. And then I added a key to that global object that said my favorite equals true. So now that that's done, OK, so I went all the way through that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart the entire frame. So basically, that shoots me back in time to when the function started. Now, there are some caveats with this. For example, top repo, a local variable, was reset over here. You can see top repo says undefined, so it was set to its initial state. However, in the global scope, the best repo was not reset to its initial state. So that caused a permanent change in the state of the application. I don't know why it's designed like that. I guess that's the philosophy they had when doing that. So this does have limitations, but it's really nice if it's an independent function and you just want to go back in time and see what you did. You can do some fun things with the console. Say you have a big collection of data and you want to log it out in a nice looking way. So I have a collection of objects. I can console it out as a table, which is nice. So it prints out all the headers. So if each object in the collection has the same headers, you can also filter it down to the headers you want to see. So this is just a list of GitHub repos along with their Stargazer count. And you can go in here and you can click around with it and sort it and that sort of thing. If you want to do like a quick timing of performance of a function, you can use console.time. So over here in the right-hand side, I have a, I'm just going to refresh real quick. I have a little column. I'm going to render out some data into it, into some DOM elements. And then in the console, it showed me, oops, rendering performance, there you go. It showed me that took 12 milliseconds. So there's a whole tab on rendering performance and graphics, which you could do a whole talk on, 2 hours worth. But this is a lightning talk, so I'm just going to focus on that. You can log out things with CSS styles. So there's a fun, patriotic thing you can log out. Or if you want to do something more realistic, say you have this collection of data, and I want to see all the GitHub repos in my collection of data that have 10 or more stars, then I can do something like this. So what that did is it made it black and white and large, the ones I care about, and then it just made the other ones small and gray that I don't care about. So it's a quick kind of visual test to look at your look at data and log it out real quick. If you are running PHP on a server, I have a little PHP server going in the background. You can do PHP logging. This requires a Chrome extension and a PHP library. But it's super useful if you ever do anything like persistence with a database. What I have in the background is I'm reading JSON from a file. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to log it out in my PHP code, and it's actually going to get caught inside my developer tools. And it formats it really nice. So sometimes you have really complex PHP objects from an API or something, and it's really cumbersome to put them in the error log or to print them out to the screen if it's 2005 and you like to do that kind of thing. This is a little bit more advanced in that you can look in and you can inspect the object. And so this is actually from PHP. So I have a repo class defined in PHP, and it logs out. And that's just using a little Chrome extension that catches that. So another use case that I come across all the time is that I have some kind of error that's uncaught in my code, and I cannot figure out what's throwing it. Or in the case of using source mapping, Chrome can't figure out what's throwing it. So you can use something over here that the Chrome docs call the purple pause. So using the purple pause, you can catch something that's happening that's uncaught. So for example, I have some JSON that's going to parse, and it's invalid JSON. So let me do it without the purple pause, and you'll see the error come up. So you see over there in the console, I have unexpected token A because it's invalid JSON. But if I use the purple pause and do that, then it stops right before the error is going to occur. So this is kind of nice. If you're just unable to track, and you don't want to write try catches around everything, you just want to know where this is coming from. So that's a really nice way, and it prevents you from having to do console.log statements to look at your code beforehand or just guess. It takes a lot of the guessing out of the whole thing. Lastly, and this is probably the biggest update, and this actually just landed in the main Chrome web browser, is there's now a device emulator inside the Chrome Dev Tools. So this is really nice. They have pretty much everything you can think of. So let's go to iPhone. That's everyone's favorite. So I'm going to do a quick refresh. So notice how it takes on, I have some media queries sitting inside my CSS. So it respects those media queries and renders it out. And also you notice my cursor kind of came a dot. So now it's emulating touch events. It can't do multi-touch, just single touch. But let me show you. So I have a little touch handler on this button right here. It says touch me. And then it just echoes out to the console touch event. So that is listening to touch events, not click events. So that's really nice if that's something you're interested in. And then up here with the media queries, you can easily click on these. And this actually reads out your CSS to see which media queries are in your code. So you can easily debug and see what looks good. And then lastly, which I think this is really useful without an external app, you can throttle your connection if you're trying to do testing on mobile, for example, and your use case is for cell phones in Tanzania where they have one cell tower for 100 million people. I know, edge case, right? You could test it with Edge or 3G, and that way you can tell what your website will perform like under that load. So that's the Chrome Dev Tools. I encourage everyone to go check it out. They have awesome documentation, and they also have a lot of cool extensions. You can put the terminal in your Dev Tools. You can also do, and Jay will love this, you can do gulp. I'm sure he knows about the gulp extension. So this actually read my gulp file here, and I can just initiate tasks from here. So really, I could do most of my workflow all from inside the Dev Tools, only switching to my editor when I need to change something. So that is the Chrome Dev Tools. Thank you.